basically we've got one country that's producing this. So let's say this country can, if it spends all its resources on making clothes, it can make 100 items of clothing. If it spends all its resources on making food, it can make 300 items of food, but no clothing. So the production possibilities frontier is basically all the combinations that they can make, and so for each amount of clothing that they make, this is the maximum amount of food they can still make with the resources they have left after producing this amount of clothing. So basically all these points here are production combinations that they cannot make. They don't have enough resources to make anything outside of the PPF. And all the points in here are inefficient because they still have resources left to make either more clothing or more food. So your optimal production is going to be, when you want to optimize social welfare, basically it's going to be on this PPF. On the other side, you have your indifference curves, which basically reflect combinations of clothing and food that have the same utility to society. Let's draw a few of them. So with this, you have basically, you could say that society is indifferent between having these 200 items of food and say 40 items of clothing, or having only 150 items of food and 60 items of clothing, because they're on the same utility curve. So, and curves more to the right reflect a higher utility, because basically the core assumption here is that if people have more goods, they're happier. So the more you are to the right, the more goods you have, the higher utility of society. So the optimal production for society is where these lines meet. So a utility curve and the PPF, where they have the same slope. And when you're in this point, for example, on this utility curve, you can still move, you can make less food and more clothing, and by doing so you can progress to a higher utility curve, so a higher societal utility. So at the point where these two curves have the same slope, when they meet basically, this is the highest utility you can achieve as society. And that's how that works for just one country. Is that clear? Okay.
Wow.